churches and the chapels came the ones we must pursue. And though I long to be unshackled, I shall see my burden through. Can you hear the choir sing? Hail the satellites. Watch the end of everything on this longest night. 1,000 eyes open inside to grant me sight to see the end. 1,000 eyes, the curse of the wise, into the madness I descend. From my final perch I ponder on the infinite and vast. In the blindness I still wander, though my time has almost passed. There are things I long to teach you in my institution's creeds, looking just behind the corners of our own realities. Can you hear the choir sing? Horses fill the spires. Hymns of one still echoing, prayers on the lips of liars. 1,000 eyes open inside to grant me sight to see the end. 1,000 eyes, the curse of the wise, to the madness I descend. 1,000 eyes open inside to grant me sight to see the end. The more I behold, the further I fold, down to the madness I descend. And the chord's quick melody, in the deafening dirges rise, and the ones who would never be, behold the end when 1,000 die. Their blood will guide your way. Look to the inside to break the seal. Lead out the dark decay. Ascend to places beyond the veil. Their blood will guide your way. Look to the inside to break the seal. Lead out the dark decay. Ascend to places beyond the
Well, here we are, about to watch some spoopy shit. Oh, sorry, got kind of a headache.
Oh.
So does Sif. But we might as well get into it. No sense in holding all this up. So, boop.
In 2017, Alex downloaded Tinder for the first time in his life. Because he'd never had much success with women and he didn't consider himself too attractive, he figured he might as well try his luck with dating apps. As is often the case for average-looking guys in online dating, Alex initially didn't get a lot of attention from the kind of girls he wanted to meet up with. But things took a turn when pretty soon he got a message from a pretty blonde girl named Katie. At first, Alex assumed she was either a bot or a catfisher, as she was by far the most attractive girl who had ever paid him any real attention on the app. Being that it was his first time on the app, he didn't know entirely how to act. I mean, on the one hand, if Katie was a real girl, he didn't want to screw things up with her by ghosting her. But on the other hand, he didn't want to entertain any bot or walk into any obvious trouble. After overthinking for several hours, Alex...
Sorry. We're watching 5 Most Disturbing Tinder Meetups by Chilling Scares. Yeah, Chilling Scares. So, sorry, didn't mean to not credit them, but they're credited now.
finally decided to just ignore the text, frustrated by his unexciting introduction to online dating. But unlike most bots who usually don't message people more than once after being ignored, Katie reached out to him once again just 3 days later. In the back of his mind, he was still a little bit suspicious, but he was strongly considering the possibility that Katie was a real person. And after taking a more in-depth look at her profile, he decided to give her a chance and texted her back, thinking what's the worst that could happen. Against all expectations, Alex and Katie hit it off immediately, like to the point where they were messaging each other pretty much every day. Having that nagging feeling in the back of his mind that she actually wasn't real the entire time, he finally asked her to prove she was real by having a video call. And she had no problem doing that. Fast forward a couple of weeks and they were having phone conversations and video calls all the time. It was pretty much clear that Katie was a real person. After talking with Alex on Tinder for about a month, Katie suggested that Alex should go and visit her. Even though he trusted her by this point, he was still hesitant to meet up with a girl he met up online, especially considering the fact that they were 8 hours apart. But Katie continued to insist, and after weighing all his options, Alex finally accepted, figuring he could take off a day or two to go see if they actually had any in-person chemistry. When the day came, he was nervous, but the last thing he wanted to do was cancel on her. So he started to drive to Katie's place. However, not long into it, he started to notice something was a little off. She messaged him almost compulsively to ask him where it was and how long until he was going to be there. Even though she must have known Alex was driving, whenever he took more than half an hour to respond, she would spam him with texts, insisting he check his phone more often. It threw him off a bit, of course, but Alex was nervous, and so he chalked it up to her being nervous as well. He kept driving, and as he got closer to the location Katie had given him, he realized it was going to be harder than he thought to find the house. The directions were pretty confusing, and he had to drive through a series of gravel roads surrounded by thick trees to get to the location. Every road kind of just looked the same. After driving around in probably multiple circles for what felt like hours, he finally made it to Katie's at about 2 p.m. He was immediately surprised by how old the house looked. There was a boarded up window on the second floor, and the building
fucking
looked like
straight up went to House of a Thousand Corpses.
Still, he caught a glimpse of the red buggy that Katie loved to talk about over text, and feeling slightly comforted, he parked right in front of the garage. He texted her that he was there, and Katie replied with a single smiley face. It was a bit weird, but he figured that was the go-ahead to get out of the car and finally knock on the door, so he did so. And that's when he noticed an older guy staring down at him from one of the second-floor windows. The drive there had already been pretty strange, but this was by far the creepiest thing that had happened to him ever since he left his house. Still, he did remember one time over the phone how Katie had talked about her dad and how he would sometimes visit her, and he assumed the man on the second floor must have been him. Again, going back to feeling nervous, he finally knocked on the front door where Katie appeared a few seconds later, inviting him in with a warm smile. Even though he FaceTimed her multiple times, so he pretty much already knew she was real, after all the things that had happened, he was pretty relieved to actually see her in person. She gave him a hug, and he breathed a bit of a sigh of relief. They talked for a little while, and that's when Alex asked her why she hadn't told him about her dad being there that day. Katie's face instantly showed confusion, and she responded that her dad was halfway across the country and wasn't planning on visiting for at least a few weeks. As far as she knew, she was home alone. Thinking she was obviously just trying to scare him now, Alex kind of rolled his eyes and explained how he had seen her dad looking at him through the second floor window when he got out of his car. That's when Katie's face turned an obvious pale color, and she whispered to Alex that they had to leave the house immediately. Surprised by the seriousness of her reaction, his heart kind of fell to the bottom of his chest, realizing they might be in serious danger. They went out the front door and got a good view of the house a good distance away, and that's when Alex begged for an explanation. According to Katie, she wasn't expecting any other visitors, and she didn't know who the old man was or how he had even gotten in. Alex called the police as Katie was sort of standing behind him, and That's when he heard her kind of gasp and point up at the second floor window. There again was the old man looking down at them. He looked sort of old and frail, as if he hadn't eaten in several days. As soon as he noticed that he had been noticed, he sort of backed away, slowly disappearing into the darkness of the rest of the house and out of view from Katie and Alex. Pretty terrified from the sight, the two of them got into Alex's car, where they locked the doors and waited for police to arrive. They didn't want to fully leave the premises because they wanted to be there when the police arrived, but they also wanted some sort of safety to protect them if any sort of danger came their way from this man. 2 police officers arrived about 30 minutes later. They happily searched the entire house from top to bottom. However, they didn't find anything, except the back door hanging wide open.
Loki?
But the man himself was nowhere to be seen inside the house. The cops couldn't really do anything at that point, so they kind of just told the two to go back inside and make sure all the doors and windows are locked and to call them back if anything else happened. They left, and Katie, pretty understandably, was too scared to spend the night alone, and so Alex agreed to stay with her downstairs on the couch to avoid going to the second floor. Katie explained how her dad owned a shotgun, and so the two of them grabbed it and put it by their side as they sat there. They sort of tried to fall asleep, and a couple hours later, Katie actually managed to do so. But Alex sort of felt an obligation to protect her, and so he remained awake watching TV with the shotgun now on his lap. Ever since the cops had left, the night was going pretty peacefully, and Alex, kind of forgetting about what had all happened, he even thought he might still have a chance with Katie the next day. But at around 2 a.m., Alex started to hear the sound of a doorknob being turned in the upstairs kitchen. Horrified, he tightened his grip on the shotgun, determined to scare away whoever was trying to get into the house. He slowly walked up the stairs to the kitchen, where he turned on a light so his presence would be known. He pointed the shotgun at the door that was making the noise, and to his horror, on the other side of the glass door, he saw the same frail-looking old man from earlier that afternoon. For a guy who was blatantly breaking and entering, the man looked shocked to see Alex, but after a couple of seconds, he turned around and ran off into the woods once again. He immediately went downstairs to wake up Katie and told her what had happened, and called the cops for the second time that day. Again, they took about 30 minutes to arrive, and this time, instead of searching just the house, they also searched the surrounding woods. However, the old man again was nowhere to be found. All they could do this time was suggest to Katie and Alex to go sleep somewhere else for the night, as obviously this house was not safe. Realistically, Alex realized that they probably should have done this after the first time of seeing him, but he was kind of just going along with Katie. Obviously, he realized this wasn't the best first date, but he was just happy that the two of them were okay. The cops left, and so Alex and Katie sort of said their goodbyes, and Katie went to go spend the night at her friend's house. Alex hung around for a little while longer to call his brother and tell him about what had happened. A few minutes later, sitting in his car on the phone with his brother and about to pull away, he saw someone move out of the corner of his eye. He noticed it was the same old man standing in front of the house watching him. He put the pedal to the floor and told his brother what was happening, sort of as it was happening. After he got off the phone with his brother, he debated calling Katie and telling her what had happened. He didn't really want to, knowing that it might scare her, but ultimately he decided he probably should. Although he did end up going on a couple of dates with Katie after that, he said he never fully got over the incident, and they eventually broke things off. According to Alex, Katie never went back to that house alone.
Huh. It's a hell of a first date.
In 2015, Ryan Nolan was 20 years old and was enjoying all that Tinder had to offer. Aside from the occasional bad date where he got stood up or just didn't connect with the girl he met up with, he was pretty happy with the way things were going for him on the app overall. One weekend in the winter, he made plans to visit some friends at Indiana University in Bloomington. Just to hang out, go out, and have fun. The first night he was there, everything went according to plan, and Ryan had a blast partying with his buddies. At some point during the weekend, he figured he might as well get on Tinder to try and meet up with a cute girl in Bloomington and see where things went. Like usual for Ryan, it didn't take long for him to get a match, and after talking to this girl named Jane for a little less than a day, they started making plans to meet up that same evening. Jane was pretty attractive and fun to talk to, so he thought, why not? After letting his friends know he was going to meet up with his Tinder date, he left the apartment and made the 5-minute drive to her place. As soon as he got to the building, he texted Jane in the app and asked her which door he was supposed to go in. He waited for her to respond as he sat in his car, but soon realized that was kind of stupid, and so he got out of his car and started walking around the complex to hopefully give her an idea of where he was, and maybe he'd see her outside her door. After a while, as he was walking, Jane finally responded, and Ryan finally could walk to the right door. He stepped in front of it and texted her back to meet him at the door and let him in, assuming the door would be locked. Keep in mind, it was about 10 p.m. in the dead of winter. He looked back and forth from his phone screen to see if she responded, back to the door to see if she was answering it. That's when he noticed movement from the corner of his eye coming from one of the windows. He took a better look and saw what looked like 4 different people looking at him through the blinds. He thought it was pretty creepy, but he also didn't know that window was to Jane's specific apartment. It could have been one of her neighbors or something, and he also wasn't in the best part of town, so he kind of just brushed it off. He again texted Jane to ask her where she was. Less than a minute later, his phone dinged, and it was her replying that the front door to the complex was already open. He was kind of surprised that she would leave the door unlocked so late at night, especially in this part of town. He walked in and shut the door behind him. There was only one dim light, so he couldn't really see anything and was fidgeting around the wall looking for a light switch. Almost immediately, he heard a voice behind an apartment door whisper, "He's right outside the door." That's when he realized the window he saw outside was to Jane's apartment. It was just to a different room. He got a strong gut reaction telling him he was in danger, and he quickly sprinted out of the complex. Now running, he went to his car and hightailed it out of there as fast as he could.
Yeah, no
way
shit.
back, he couldn't stop thinking about what would have happened to him had he continued further, thinking some sort of Jane was actually in there. He was starting to realize that Jane probably didn't exist at all, and that thought alone sent shivers down his spine. When he got back to his friend's place, he explained everything to them about what had happened, but they ultimately didn't really take him that seriously and kind of assumed he was just overreacting about the whole thing. A little later that evening, they went and got a few beers, and right before he went to bed, he got an ominous text from Jane saying, "Where did you go? I've been waiting for you all night." Immediately, he blocked the number and went to sleep. He never found out who exactly was waiting for him in that apartment, but if one thing's for sure, he knew it wasn't a girl named Jane. In 2021, Abe was dumped by his long-term girlfriend. The experience left him pretty bruised up, but after a while he decided to get back out there and start dating again. Abe was more on the shy side, and so he wasn't the best at asking girls out. He wasn't exactly sure why, but either way, it wasn't his strong suit. When Abe had met his ex 6 years earlier, Tinder and other dating apps were just becoming popular, so online dating was pretty unfamiliar to him. But now he was single, and so he was pretty excited to try it out for the first time. He had a few friends that had found success on dating apps, and so he was pretty optimistic. But after a few months of using Tinder, he realized online dating wasn't at all what he thought it would be. He only managed to meet up with one girl in the park, and after 20 minutes, she played the classic phone call move, claiming she had gotten called into work. As you can probably guess, he never heard back from her again. He was about to call it and just give up on dating apps completely when he got matched with a girl named Danny. She was a really pretty girl who he knew was way out of his league and had a sneaking suspicion that he was being catfished or played by one of his friends. He'd heard many stories of catfishing, and at one point he thought for sure Danny was going to be some 50-year-old dude. But because he didn't have many other options, and he was thrilled at the small possibility of Danny being who she said she was, he continued to talk to her anyway.
Could you imagine getting fucking Tinder matched up with fucking "It's ma'am"? Oh my.
They talked for a few days and finally agreed to meet at a local park, which Abe thought would be a perfect spot for a first date. There was this big lake in the middle and a series of trails that went all around the lake, which he thought would be pretty romantic. They agreed to meet up at 5 p.m. when the both of them had gotten off of work. A little after 5, she messaged him saying she was walking to the pavilion where all the picnic tables were. He looked over to his left out of his car window, and sure enough, there was the girl from the Tinder pictures. She was actually real. A newfound nervousness knowing that she was actually real, Abe got out of the car and walked up to her. They were able to talk for a few hours and actually had some pretty good chemistry between the two of them.
Excuse me.
Abe honestly couldn't believe he was pulling it off. Later that evening, as their talk was starting to wrap up, they decided to go for a walk on one of the trails, not wanting to end the date, and even though it was starting to get dark out, they decided to do it. Normally, Abe would never have agreed to walk in the dark with a stranger he had just met online, but he felt calm with Danny for some reason. He
Sweetheart.
trusted her. They even helped.
You got something you want to say? Do you want to say something to everybody? What do you say? What? That was loud. What? Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh.
Yes, ma'am. You want more Levins? You want more Levins? Oh, you tell them. You tell all of them. They're all right there. Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Oh.
You had a whole day of adventure, didn't you?
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
You're just telling everybody, aren't you? Yeah. You got so much. Oh. It was like that, huh? Was that your day?
Oh.
Okay. She's just a howling away. I know she's got food and water. You want to go outside? You want to go outside with Loki? Come on, Loki. Come on, Loki. Come on, buddy. Okay. Woo. Sorry about that.
held hands, and for the first time since he had been dumped, Abe felt something special. They walked for a long time along the lake until it was pretty much completely dark, at which point Danny suggested that they turn around and start making their way back to the parking lot. For the first few minutes, the walk back was perfect. They had a few more good conversations, and it felt like the chemistry was continuing to grow. However, that's when things took a turn for the worse. They weren't far from the parking lot when Abe noticed what looked like a man standing in the walkway, just watching them from a distance. The guy was just standing there, which obviously wasn't normal, and he could barely see him from the distance, so he started to wonder if it was just his imagination. He didn't say anything to Danny at first, but as they got closer, with the help of the faint light of the moon shining through the trees, he realized it was a person. Danny froze before Abe could say anything, and that's when he asked her if she could see the man, and she said that she could. That's when Danny shouted at the man and asked him if he needed anything, but the man just continued to stand there, staring at them.
Amazon hates this, but there's nothing they can do to stop it. There's a new electric lighter out there, and it's got the firepower of a military-grade flamethrower. It's already been banned from Home Depot, Amazon, and Walmart for being too powerful. But the company behind it, they're not playing ball with the big retailers, and they've sold over 3 million units in just the past 30 days. That's right, they're cutting out the middleman and slashing the price. This lighter called Fireblaze is unlike anything you've ever seen. It's been featured in all major newspapers like NBC News, Fox News, and even CNN.
Abe
Sorry,
was a bit
guys.
taken aback by this, thinking they should
was
just
astounded
sneak
by the
away
stupidity
rather
of
than make
that.
some giant scene about it. He thought this would put them at a better chance of being attacked, but he also didn't want to seem too scared in front of Danny. He tried to write off the whole thing as some idiot trying to play a joke on them, doing his best to hide the fear in his voice as he also yelled out. Danny reluctantly nodded towards the man, ensuing that they should keep going. And so Abe did so. He walked with her. He continued to pray that the man was just playing a joke on them, or that he would just turn around and leave them alone. But the guy didn't move at all. To make matters worse, they could now clearly see that he was concealing something behind his back. When they were about 10 feet away from him, the man finally moved his hands from behind his back and pointed a hunting knife at them. In a low and rough voice, he commanded them to turn around and put their hands above their head. Abe sort of froze up, not realizing the reality of the situation he was in. He honestly had no clue what to do. He had never been robbed before, and at that moment he knew he was in very real danger. And that's when he suspected Danny of setting him up. He kind of looked over at her and wondered if she really could be behind this. However, that thought quickly left his head when Danny started to aggressively argue with the guy. Before Abe could even process what was happening, she started running at the armed man. Right before she reached him, she kind of threw her body at him and managed to knock him over. As soon as the man hit the ground face up, she shouted for Abe to run. Abe, kinda now even more taken aback by what he was seeing, just stood there, but finally started to run. He didn't want to leave Danny alone, but he didn't really need much more convincing. A A couple of seconds later,
Jesus
Danny managed to get up
Christ.
and caught up to Abe. They could both clearly hear the man running after them as they made their way off the trail and sort of down this shortcut towards the parking lot. As soon as they got there, they both threw themselves into Danny's car and drove off, not even checking if there was anyone behind them as they pulled out of the parking lot.
She got more
As they
balls than he
picked up
does.
speed and were starting to actually drive off, Abe looked in his rearview mirror, and that's when he saw the man with the knife in his hand still standing there. He was standing alone in the parking lot, again just staring at them as they drove off. Another thing they did notice is that there were other cars in the parking lot at the time of leaving. There were 3 other ones. This made them think that the guy may have had other accomplices with him. When they were a safe distance away, they called the police and reported what had just happened. The cops arrived at the scene pretty quickly, but the man was long gone, and the only car left in the lot now was Abe's. After they gave their statements to the cops and they left the area, they decided to go on a late-night dinner and stayed up all night talking about what had just happened. It was almost like the shared sense of danger from the incident had brought them closer in some way, and despite his horror, Abe decided to just go with it. Fast forward to
Why
2
not?
years later, and Abe and Danny are now engaged. Whenever
Hell
they're
yeah.
asked about how they met, they always
He's
have
a
laugh at
dumbass,
people's
but hell yeah.
reactions where they tell them that they met on Tinder and almost got killed on their first date.
All right.
When
I
he
guess
was
I could move my
21,
mouse out of the
Taylor
way,
had
huh?
just gotten dumped by his girlfriend,
Sorry, guys.
and had also recently become a police officer. As a 21-year-old new cop, he had this sort of I'm invincible and I can take on anyone mentality. So when he downloaded Tinder and matched with a good-looking girl named Brianna, who was way out of his league, he assumed things would go great for him. After getting to know her a while on Tinder, they finally set up a date to meet. Brianna had mentioned our house had this great open field to sort of just look at the stars, hang out, and talk, and she offered for it to be their first date location. Taylor thought it was as good a spot as any and agreed. When the night came for them to meet, he was pretty excited to pick her up, and she seemed pretty excited as well as she got into his car. As she guided him to the field, Taylor knew it was going to be a great night. They had lucked out with the weather, and there were a ton of stars out. And it was this huge, peaceful open space with some nice woods, there were deer, and there were even other wildlife visible in the distance. It was the textbook perfect spot for a first date. However, as soon as Taylor parked the car, he noticed some really dim headlights in the distance. It looked like a van, but he wasn't entirely sure. When the vehicle got closer, he confirmed that it was a van, and he was a bit confused thinking they were the only ones on the property. As the van got closer, it didn't look like it was stopping, and it was in perfect head-on collision line with the parked car they were in. But as it got closer, it finally hit the brakes and stopped almost headlight to headlight with their parked car. It pretty much blocked Taylor's car from moving forward at all. Brianna seemed to have a confused look on her face, and so assuming she didn't know who it was, he kind of prepared for the worst and told her to stay in the car while he went to see what was going on. He grabbed his flashlight and walked up to the van, where he saw a pretty big dude sitting in the driver's seat. Sort of angrily at this point, he asked him what was going on and if he could back up his car a little bit. Surprisingly, the man was actually really polite, and in a low, kind voice, he said he was the owner of the property and didn't mean to scare them at all. According to the man, who introduced himself as Bob, he had been having trouble with poachers on his property and just wanted to make sure Taylor and Brianna weren't going to be shooting at the deer or hurting any of the other animals on the property.
That's
Taylor, a
fair.
bit taken aback by this, lowered his voice to a more calm level. He smiled politely and assured him that they only came out to look at the stars and the wildlife. Bob seemed to be pretty happy with his explanation, and a few seconds later he wished them a nice evening and drove away. Taylor, pretty happy with how he had handled things, went back to his car ready to enjoy his first date. However, now Brianna, for whatever reason, didn't seem to be on the same page, and he noticed something very off about her behavior. Instead of actually talking to him and enjoying the date like they were just before, she was now texting nonstop, and when Taylor asked her who she was talking to, she refused to answer. He thought it was pretty weird, but he chalked it up to her nervousness or whatever and tried his best to strike up a fun conversation with her. About an hour later, he saw the same headlights coming towards them again, this time at a much faster pace than before. Feeling that he and his date were now in serious danger, he hopped in his truck and moved to a more defensive position. After the van screeched to a stop inches away from Taylor's car, even closer than before, Brianna jumped out of the truck and ran towards the van. Taylor at first was sort of confused, thinking why she would run to this van that seems to be a threat to them. However, that's when Taylor realized he had been set up.
So you think you know Wix, but do you really?
I don't know what the fuck Wix is, nor do I
First up,
care.
Thinking quickly, he got out of his truck and commanded them to get on the ground. Obviously, though, neither Brianna or who he now realized was Bob complied. To Taylor's horror, Bob then charged at him and knocked him on the ground. Using all of his strength, Taylor managed to get up on his back and get up before Bob could grab him again. Everything was happening too quickly for him to process, but he knew he had to do something quickly or something really messed up would happen to him. That's when he saw Brianna, who a second ago he trusted, grab the metal pipe from Bob's van. She sort of shouted at him that they had a gun, but that if he gave them all his money and his truck, he would walk away unharmed. Now, again, Taylor had this sort of I'm invincible kind of mindset, and so he refused, to which Brianna started to cry, saying that she didn't want to hurt him if she didn't have to. When he saw Bob run back to the van, he finally revealed to them he was a cop, and he drew his concealed gun and commanded them to get on the ground. After a moment of shock, they finally complied, and Taylor scrambled to call 911. Just as he was telling dispatch that he had 2 suspects at gunpoint and needed backup immediately, Bob and Brianna got up and quickly started sprinting away into the darkness. Even though he knew it was a dumb choice at the time, Taylor initially started chasing them and ran into the woods around the field. The chase lasted maybe 30 seconds when Taylor heard 3 loud pops and saw a muzzle flash in the distance. Now feeling true panic for the first time that night, he sprinted back to his car and put the pedal to the metal until he was a safe distance away. Minutes later, he went back to the house where he had picked up Brianna, called dispatch again, and asked the cops to come to that location. As soon as his sergeant and field training officer got there, obviously knowing who he was, they sort of gave him crap about having to call the cops. When he really was the cops, he was just off duty. However, at the same time, they did recognize the seriousness of the situation and got in a patrol car and all drove down towards the field. To everyone's surprise, the van was still there. To Taylor's disappointment, his sergeant ordered him to stay in the car, keep his mouth shut, and only come out if they were getting shot at. Although the sergeant and training officer didn't find any sign of Bob or Brianna, they did find drugs in the center console of the car. But that wasn't all they found. When they came back to the patrol car, they weren't doing any more joking around, and the both of them looked pale and horrified at what they had just seen. They told Taylor to follow them back to the van, and after peering inside, he saw several knives, duct tape, lighter fluid, a decent amount of rifle ammo, handcuffs, and what looked to be dried blood. In the front passenger side, they found an AR-15 style rifle and 2 more handcuffs. The atmosphere obviously immediately changed as the 3 of them looked at each other wide-eyed. The team called for backup, and a few minutes later, detectives arrived at the scene, which is where it was revealed that the plates were stolen and that the van had been reported stolen a few weeks prior to the incident. Taylor does still get picked on by his supervising officers about the incident to this day, but he's just happy no one got hurt. Since that night, he never went back to online dating again.
Yeah, no shit. That would have been enough.
In 2019, Sabrina matched with a guy on Tinder named Nick, who she thought was really cute. Because she'd had plenty of good experiences using dating apps in the past, her guard was a little down, and she rarely let her friends know what she was doing, who she was with, or where she was. For the first couple of dates with this guy, they went to get coffee or on walks outside. After about 2 weeks of dating, Sabrina decided she really liked Nick. He was friendly, good-looking, he was funny, he had his life together, and they also had great chemistry together.
His real name was Richard Ramirez.
For their third date, Nick suggested that Sabrina should come over to his place to have some wine. Feeling safe and comfortable enough to be alone with this guy at this point, Sabrina agreed. When the night of their date finally came, she went over to Nick's house, excited to get to know him even better. The two joked around for a bit and started talking like on their previous dates. After a while, Nick poured her a glass of wine. At this point, Sabrina thought things were going really well, and she felt comfortable in his company. However, after a while, at about 8 p.m., Sabrina started feeling a little funny. She felt almost sleepy and a little weak. She had trouble stringing a sentence together. Now, in the past, Sabrina had been roofied once before at a college party, and so she immediately recognized the effects as soon as they kicked in. But at the exact same time, now realizing the danger of the situation she was in, she pretended she was feeling fine. From her past experience, she knew she only had a few minutes before she passed out and was left vulnerable and at the mercy of this man that she thought she could trust. She knew she had to do something, and so at around 8:15, Sabrina told Nick as quickly and energetically as possible that she needed to use the bathroom, trying her best to make it seem as if nothing was off. Fortunately, Nick didn't seem to notice anything strange about her behavior, and once she was inside the bathroom, she locked the door immediately and called the police. As Sabrina sat there, her surroundings starting to blur, she told them that she had been drugged and that they needed to come get her out before something terrible happened. Less than a minute after giving the cops Nick's address and hanging up the phone, she was completely out. But because she was still under the effects of the drug, she felt herself slide in and out of consciousness during this time. All she remembers is the police putting a bag over her head as they carried her out of the bathroom and into the patrol car. Following this entire incident, Sabrina was understandably traumatized, but at that point she wasn't even aware of how badly things could have ended for her had she not reacted as quickly as she did. A few days later, she received a call from the police asking her to come down to the station to give her statement. Once there, she mentioned to the cops that the only thing she remembered clearly was that they had put a bag over her head, but that she could have imagined it due to the effects of the drug. As soon as she said this, the cops looked at each other uncomfortably and confessed that they had indeed put a bag over her head. Sabrina looked at them, kinda confused. They quickly explained that it was actually to protect her. When they walked into the apartment, they saw that Nick had set up something extremely disturbing for her in the living room, and that seeing it would have been too traumatizing for Sabrina.
Oh,
She
fuck.
immediately felt a shiver go down her spine. Because Nick was thrown in jail following the incident, she never found out what exactly he had prepared for her. However, she kinda sees this as a good thing. After this whole nightmare, Sabrina deleted Tinder and vowed never to go back to online dating again.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Shit, I should have liked it. My bad. I'm sorry. I like it. I swear. This one's Highway Horror Stories.
This happened in June of 2020, back when the pandemic was in full swing. Like everyone else, I was spending a lot of time inside. I wanted to get out and had the idea of going camping. 6 of us planned to go. We found a really nice looking spot on Google Maps that was alongside a lake. It was 5 hours away. We decided to take 2 cars since we couldn't comfortably fit all of us with all of our stuff in just one. In the first car was me, my sister's friend Hannah, and a guy Hannah brought named Jack, who I didn't really know if it was her boyfriend, just a friend. I didn't know and I didn't ask. The second car had my cousin and her husband Josh. We packed up the cars and started making the long journey through the mountains around 3 a.m. so we could get to the spot early that morning. The drive started out normal, but about 2 hours into it, Jack started complaining about how sick he was starting to feel. Which was fair, the roads were windy. I asked him if he wanted me to pull over, and he said not yet. Jack was sitting in the back seat with Hannah. I kept glancing up at him through the rearview mirror to see how he was doing. The last thing I wanted was a pool of vomit all over my back seat. As I looked, I started to notice him acting really suspicious all of a sudden. He had his hand in his backpack and a grin on his face. He started asking really weird questions. He asked me if my car doors were locked. I replied saying they were, that they automatically lock when the car goes into drive, like pretty much every car does these days. My sister and I exchanged weird looks with each other. Eventually, he told me he was gonna throw up. I offered to pull to the side of the highway, but he insisted I take this dirt road that he somehow knew was coming up. I called my cousin in the other car behind us to tell her what we were doing. Jack proceeded to lead us down a dirt road that barely had enough room for our cars to fit through the trees. Multiple times I asked him if this was good, but each time he told me to keep going.
Shit, no, I wouldn't. I'd just pull
I
over and be
shot
like, all right,
multiple
you can fucking
concerned
hurl
looks towards
here.
my sister. Finally, Jack told us to stop. He got out of the car and ran into the woods, disappearing almost immediately. We couldn't see anything, only what was in front of us lit by our headlights. 2 minutes went by. 3 minutes. 5 minutes. 10 minutes.
Fucking leave him there.
Nothing. Suddenly, 3 men came out from the trees on our left. They were wearing those masks from the Purge movies. It was dark,
Oh,
so
shit.
I couldn't tell, but it looked like they were holding weapons. I laid on the horn and started driving forward where I would have enough room to turn around. My cousin in the car behind us did the same. As we were driving off, I caught another look at the men. They were just standing there, watching us. We made it about 100 feet when I noticed something on the road in front of us. It was a spike strip. I quickly got out of the car and threw it off the road into the forest. I got back in, looked in my rearview mirror, and now saw the men full-on sprinting towards us. I put the pedal on the floor, and we made it back to the highway minutes later. I got a call from my cousin who sounded frantic, asking who those men were. I told her we had no idea, but that Jack never came back from out of the woods. Hannah later found out she got a text from him. It was 2 words, F you. We started questioning Hannah how she knew Jack, because like I said, I didn't know if it was her boyfriend, friend, or what. She said she had met him on Tinder a couple weeks back.
Oh, fucking, dude, we're not even on the Tinder fucking thing.
Red flags. This guy was trying to lead us into the woods to possibly kill us.
Yeah.
My sister cut ties with Hannah not long after this. We don't know if she ever talked to Jack again, but for her sake, I hope she didn't. We ended up canceling that whole trip.
Damn it.
Whatever you do it for less at Harbor Freight.
Shit.
How many times have you lost your wallet this year? It's not
Never.
your fault. You just don't have the Groove Smart Wallet.
Let me start by saying I've always really enjoyed road trips. I'll sometimes take them just for fun, listening to music and getting lost. It's usually just over the weekend or so. I go with my dog Zeke and usually spend the night in a cheap motel if it ends up being a multiple day thing. A few nights ago, I was taking another one. On my way back, I'd left later than I usually would. I started nodding off and realized I wouldn't make it to the next town, much less my house. The road I was on was surrounded by a dense forest, so when I found a clearing in the trees, I pulled off the highway onto the dirt. I was planning on sleeping in my car, but I honestly didn't know if it was legal or not, so I continued driving through the trees until I couldn't see the road anymore. I let Zeke out to do his business and reclined my seat all the way back. When he got back inside, I closed and locked the doors. To describe where I had parked, it was opposite a small cabin, but not directly in front of it. And again, there were plenty of trees, so I didn't feel like I was intruding on the owners in any way. Plus, at least from what I could see, it looked abandoned anyway, so I'm not sure anyone even owned it. After a few minutes, I started drifting off. I must have been sleeping for at least a few hours when I woke up to Zeke softly growling under
What's
his
up,
breath.
Awesome?
I sat there listening, trying to understand what he was hearing. Just then, I began hearing footsteps coming from outside the car. This was followed by a long, high-pitched scratching sound. Zeke started going crazy, barking non-stop. I turned on my headlights and saw a very tall, middle-aged man dragging what I thought was a key around the perimeter of my car. He walked very slowly. I didn't know if he could see me, but it felt like he didn't take his eyes off of me the entire time. He had this malicious grin on his face. Horrified, I adjusted my seat back upright and started the car ready to gun it. But he had made his way to my front bumper. All other sides of my car were surrounded by trees. The only way out of there was through him. I yelled out and laid on the horn, Zeke still aggressively barking. That's when I saw that he was holding a butcher's knife.
Oh shit.
He started walking to my driver's side door, giving me an opening. I took it and started driving back towards
Earth
the
Defense
highway.
Force.
I drove home without stopping. I got out to
Yeah,
check the
I woke him up.
damage, and my paintwork was completely ruined. I don't know if that guy was trying to teach me a lesson for parking on his property, or if he even owned the property, I don't know. I don't plan on ever sleeping in my car again, at least not in a remote area. When I was a senior in high school, me and a couple buddies used to drive out to a cemetery to do some late-night ghost hunting and mess around. We lived near a small town in Vermont, so there wasn't much else to do. We'd walk around and take photos and videos, but never captured anything unordinary. If you haven't been to Vermont before, most of the roads are very long and windy. We live deep in the middle of the woods, where there are no streetlights, and houses are like a mile or two apart from each other. The road to the cemetery itself is probably about a 20 to 25 mile 2-lane road, with just a few old-looking run-down houses. The atmosphere alone is already creepy enough, even without the cemetery. Anyway, my two friends and I were on this one trip up there around 2 in the morning. It took a good 30 minutes to get there. We were about halfway when this car comes up behind us out of nowhere and starts riding dangerously close to us, like to the extent that I couldn't even see its headlights. We couldn't make out the car or anyone inside of it, but we slowed down, assuming it's a state trooper or something. They slowed down too, keeping almost the exact same distance. I sped up again. Still, they kept the same distance. That's when they turned off their headlights. Now, remind you, there are no streetlights on this road. It's pitch black. I get up to about 20 or 25 over the speed limit, and finally we start to gain some distance. At this point, we think we lost him, when about a minute later, his headlights come back on, and he's right behind us again. Then his headlights go out. About 20 seconds, they come back on, and he's directly behind us again. He does this about 3 or 4 times. I tried to ignore it, thinking it was just some idiot driver in a hurry. Finally, as we near the exit for the cemetery, the car starts to let off. We turned into the cemetery, parked, and got out to start walking around. We were walking for maybe a minute when a set of headlights pulled up right behind our car and stopped. Now, mind you, it's 2 a.m. No one else should have been out here. The 3 of us each ducked down behind a headstone and watched. 2 masked men got out of their vehicle, both with some type of blunt object in their hands. My heart sank. If we had to run, I don't know how we would have in the dark forest with the little light we had. I could feel my heart racing inside my chest as we all looked at each other with terrified expressions. The 2 men walked up to our parked car and started looking inside the windows with flashlights. They then began trying to break into the car by tampering with the driver's side door's lock. They routinely looked up and checked their surroundings. After a few minutes, they seemed to have given up and started smashing at the door's window.
Like a what?
It shattered after 2 or 3 good hits. One of the men got inside and started trying to hotwire the car. The car wasn't the newest by any means. It definitely was possible to hotwire the thing. I sat there, praying they wouldn't be able to. It must have been 20 minutes when they gave up. They took everything out of the car, put it in their car, and drove off. Before getting out of our hiding spots, we called the police. When they arrived is when we finally revealed ourselves. We lost hundreds of dollars worth of camera gear that night. One of my buddies lost his whole camera, while the rest of us all lost things like tripods, camera lenses, and other gear. The cops took all of our statements and got photos of the car's broken window.
Ogu? Toki?
One of the officers told us how common it actually is for people to get victimized and have their cars stolen by force on these empty highways during these hours.
You know, here we just call it rally racing. We're drifting. Eight most disturbing phone calls ever received. Ooh.
A few summers ago, my old phone of 2 years began ringing. I had a new one, but my old one rang. I had to dig through my closet to even find it. A private number was calling the phone. I answered it, thinking it could have been an old friend who didn't have my new number yet. But it was a man with a strange accent I didn't recognize. He knew my name, knew my story, knew where I lived, etc. I was genuinely worried, so I asked him how he got all this information. He said we had met the night before at a house party, which I was at one, but I was with my friends, and I wasn't even drunk. I remember the whole night. We went back and forth for a few minutes, when he told me to meet him down by the river in 5 minutes and hung up. I knew exactly where he meant. I'm not usually easily intimidated, but this had me panicking. I asked my friends who went to the party with me if they were playing a prank, and they told me they were being serious about it not being them. I knew they were being genuine too, because they all offered to show up to the river with me to see who it was. There were 5 of us that went. We pulled up at a distance and slowly started walking to the spot described over the phone. It was dark and hard to see anything, but on the other side of the riverbank, we could all see a white van with tinted windows parked on the side of the road. It wasn't on, but it was still weird because no one ever parked here. There was no reason to, there was nothing nearby. We started walking up to it, and that's when the engine started and the headlights turned on. We all turned, running into a field where it couldn't follow us. Did this have anything to do with the phone call? I can't be sure, but I personally think it did. I recently listed my PS3 for sale on Craigslist. It came with a ton of games, and I wasn't asking for much, so I got calls all the time. This time, I got a call in the complete dead of night. It was like 3:30 a.m. when I woke up to my ringtone. Yeah, I would get a lot of calls, but I had never gotten one this late in the night before. I was still half asleep when I picked up the phone. Immediately, this normal-sounding guy started talking to me. He said he was calling about the PS3 I listed, and offered something crazy like $5 for the whole thing. I mumbled something about how that was way too low.
No
It
shit.
went silent for a few seconds, when out of nowhere this text-to-speech, robotic-sounding voice started listing off extremely personal information. Way more than what was public on my Craigslist account. It listed where I lived, the school I went to, the car I drove, the names of all my family members, and a lot of other stuff. I sat up panicked and hung up the phone. I got an immediate call back from the number, but this time I didn't answer. Just something about the way it switched from a normal sounding guy to all of a sudden a text-to-speech voice still freaks me out. Thankfully, nothing else ever happened. I have no idea how this guy was able to get my personal information. This happened when I was 13 and home alone. I got a phone call. I was greeted with a man's voice. Hi, I sell security systems.
Even though the PS5 Pro is super expensive, the PS3 at launch, when counting inflation, is still more expensive. You're absolutely right.
Again, I said no because it didn't. Okay. The phone line went dead.
But do you know why? Do you know why the PS3 was so expensive on its launch? That's the question. Pardon me, I'm sorry. I'm tired. It's been a really fucked off week. The government did use PS3s as servers. They created a server room connecting a whole bunch of PS3s together. And they had a contract for somebody to actually, do a server room, but for them to do it was going to take too long. So someone was all like, just hook a bunch of PS3s up together. And that's what they did. And it worked. Like real shit. You're absolutely right on that. But that's not why the PS3 was so expensive. The only reason why the PS3 was so expensive was because it had a Blu-ray player in it, which was new technology at the time and extremely powerful. And I think actually the PS3 was the first public Blu-ray player you could buy, right? And it wasn't just Blu-ray. It could play like Blu-ray and what was the other one? I don't remember. No, there's DVD, Blu-ray, and then there was like another one that like lasted this long and fell off. But it was like the same thing as like a Blu-ray pretty much. No, not CD. CD lasted a long time. CDs lasted like 12 years or 14 years or some shit like that. Yeah, I mean, technically they're still around, but yeah. No, they lasted a hell of a lot longer than that. It was like from 88 to like 2007, 2008 is when CDs really started to die off. So yeah, like 20 fucking years, man. CDs were a thing for a while. It sounds young for like CDs and stuff, but like, yeah, I mean, they weren't real popular in 88. They didn't like rise in popularity until like 93, 94, some shit like that is when like people started really using CDs. But CDs were a thing back in 88. Jesus, man, I can't think of the other fucking Blu-ray disc. Man. Anyways, the PS5 was able to play them both. Both these discs came in like a blue disc case, and it was almost indistinguishable between like a Blu-ray, DVD thing to like something else. And like that other thing just like fucking died almost immediately just because of like how similar they looked or whatever. People just started like they just picked one, and most people just picked Blu-ray because Blu-ray players were more like accessible. Anyways, I can't even remember what they were called. Oh well. But anyways, the PS3 system could play both, and it was pretty awesome.
I quickly realized.
And the PS3 used Linux, which is why they were actually able to use them as servers, by the way. Because Linux software is pretty, well, it's open software, right? So it's easy to make it do what you want it to do.
Realized my mistake and checked
Open
the locks
source.
on all the doors and windows. After I made sure everything was locked, I grabbed a kitchen knife and locked myself in my bedroom. My bedroom had a window that faced outside the front of the house. I live in a cul-de-sac, but since it was a work day, none of my neighbors were home. Still, there was a car I didn't recognize parked down the road. I called the cops and kept my eyes on it while I waited for them to show up. Suddenly, a man ran out of a bush just in front of our house and towards the car.
Oh
He got
shit.
in and immediately drove off. I saw all of it. When police arrived, I told them about the man and showed them the bush he was hiding in. The bush was just under our house's dining room window. There were clear marks of someone trying to break into it.
Oh shit.
Ripped up tissue paper can't be a solution. If you want a skin close shave that doesn't take it too far, go with
I was in my early
go with the
teenage
safety
years,
razor.
Just recently gotten my first phone.
Hey, it's the most manly way to shave other than a straight razor. And you don't get much more classic than a safety razor. I'm just saying, like, you want to, it's fucking stylish. If you guys don't know what a safety razor is, I'll show you. It is the most iconic of all razors, though. So, yeah, these, that's actually the safety razor I got. This one, right? But yeah, there you go. Those are safety razors. They are bitchin'. You won't cut yourself on them. You know, they're fucking perfect razors. Like, they're awesome. They're super sharp. The fucking razor blades themselves are dirt fucking cheap. You know, and I mean dirt cheap. They're like fucking 7 cents a fucking razor or some shit like that. You get a whole bunch of them at once, and you can use them for, you know, about a week or so, and then just toss them. You know, they give you like a little thing that you could put them in once you're done with them, you know, so they're not just like loose razor blades in your fucking trash and shit. Like, don't do that. Don't do that. Think of the garbage bin.
I got a call from an unknown caller. Nowadays, I'm much more cautious in answering these, but back then I didn't fully understand the concept of phones and answered to pretty much anyone that called. I picked up and instantly didn't recognize the voice. It sounded like an older man. I said, "Who is this?" To which he responded, "Why do you want to know?" I didn't answer because I thought it was some kind of joke or prank call. He suddenly broke the silence, saying, "I can see you." I responded with something like, "Nice try, but that's not very original." Just then, I began
Do you
hearing a
like
train going
scary
by.
movies?
My house is right next to a set of train tracks, and I swear, over the phone, I could hear the same sound of a train passing in the background. As it got closer, the sound got louder in the phone. I panicked and hung up.
It might have been.
Nothing further ever happened. This was either a huge coincidence, or I really was being stalked. Around 30 years ago, I was lying in bed trying to fall asleep beside my wife, who had fallen asleep a few hours before. It was lightly raining outside, which helped me get to that state of half awake, half asleep, when the phone on the nightstand just beside me started ringing. I slowly sat up and picked up the receiver to determine if it was a fluke or an actual call. Stuff like that used to happen back then.
You're a fucking bitch, Charlie. You're a fucking bitch. Fuck you.
And sat in silence as I listened.
Fuck you again.
It was just white noise. Until eventually I could make out two voices, two female voices. They were talking about a murder that had just occurred. I remember one of them going on about how they
These nuts. Got him. But you know what? You can love me.
Long, long
Yeah, you're damn right.
couldn't believe they had really just done it. This was followed by the other telling her to, quote, get out of there before the police arrived. They continued talking like this for a while as I just sat there still trying to process what I was hearing. Suddenly, one of the two asked the other if they heard someone else on the line. And with that, I hung up. I still don't know how something like this could have even happened. Maybe it was a prank call.
You made fucking Robin watch Long Long Man? Like the whole thing? Like all the commercials? That shit's fucking awesome, dude. My man. Dude, that end is straight up.
Emotional damage.
Like straight up. Oh, man. Oh, fuck, I'm tired, dude. Dude, it's so good. It's so good. If you guys, you know, we'll watch that after this. I'm going to look it up. And we're going to watch all, and I mean all of the
Long, long
commercials.
Back before prank calls were even really a thing. I told my wife about it the following morning.
Oh, man. Are you guys going to go to Candy Mountain? Okay, that was a pretty unique bed. That looked clean as fuck.
While my whole family was out at my brother's baseball game.
All of it.
I was 13. I was on the phone with a friend of mine.
Take it,
and someone
Robin.
beeped in on the
Take
other line.
all of it.
I told her I'd be right back and clicked over lines. I gave a hello. There was a laugh, and then the words, "I'm downstairs in your basement right now." Honestly, I just shook it off and hung up thinking it was a prank call. Our neighborhood was pretty safe, and so I figured it had to have been someone
That's
just messing
awesome. I haven't even seen all of Charlie.
I resumed talking with my friend when they beeped in again, so I again clicked over. This time I was
We've seen
met
like
with
2 or
much
3
more
episodes.
aggression. The voice said something about how I shouldn't have hung up on him and how he was coming upstairs. Suddenly the lights downstairs started flickering and there was a banging under my feet. My dog ran to the corner of the living room. Now, our basement was actually just an area connected to the garage. It wasn't finished. I heard what sounded like footsteps coming up the garage stairs that led into our kitchen, accompanied by yelling. I kept trying to hang up and call the cops, but every time I tried, he was still on the phone. I managed to switch back to the line with my friend and told her to get her parents to call the police. I sat in a locked bedroom on the main floor, horrified, quietly crying, waiting for them to arrive. They finally showed up, by which point the man was gone. There was no sign of forced entry, though the window on our outside garage door had been broken for months prior, and my guess is he used that to get in. My family was ultimately skeptical, as police couldn't really come up with any solid evidence that this had actually happened. We did end up getting a security camera and fixed our garage window not too long after that, though. But I still don't know if they truly believed me or not. This was back when I still had an old slider phone. One day I got a random call asking for some girl named Sarah. I didn't even know a Sarah, so I told them they had the wrong number, to which they hung up without saying another word. For the next few months, I would get these same calls asking for Sarah maybe once or twice a week, sometimes at absurd hours in the night. This one time I got a call. Like usual, I said I didn't know Sarah. They hung up, but this time I went to my contacts and hit redial. After I did this, I was met with the robotic voice saying the number did not exist. I went back through my call history and tried calling some of the other numbers that had called me, with the same result. The next time I got a call asking for Sarah, I said, "Oh yeah, she's right here." The person on the other end didn't hang up right away, but instead said, "No, she isn't." And the line went dead. After this, I started getting calls now from unknown numbers.
Fucking
This time
Blackberries.
there was no voice asking for Sarah. It was just...
Dude, Blackberries, that was an expensive ass phone back in the day. Like, you had a Blackberry. I think Blackberry was the first ones to have Bluetooth too, weren't they? Which is crazy to think about, because Bluetooth's been around for a long time. Like, a long time.
Just silence until I said something, and they would hang up. The creepiest one I ever got was the time they didn't hang up right away after I said hello. I could hear someone on the other end, breathing.
Yeah, Blackberries had Bluetooth.
Anything. There was just something really uneasy about all these calls. It caused me to get a new phone, after which I stopped getting the weird calls. I still don't know who this Sarah was, or why I kept getting calls about her. I was home alone by myself in my basement bedroom. I was playing games late into the night. It was like 3 a.m. when our house's landline started ringing.
Blackberries were like the iPhone 97 and a quarter or whatever, you know, like of phones for a long time. But they were the only ones that had like Bluetooth, an actual fucking keyboard on them. They slid up and down, and they weren't very big. They were only like this big, you know, like they were like half the size of this, right? So, yeah. They were fucking badass phones though. They really were. Like, they would not lose signal at all. They clung to it. However, yeah, nope, they had a pretty good screen, but I think the buttons, like, you know, the hand jam fucked them up a little bit. Oh yeah, absolutely, you can run Doom on a Blackberry. You can run Doom on a fucking, like, you can run Doom on anything. Doom's so basic, like, dude, I don't think you understand, like, the technological marvel Doom really was for its time. For a game to come out looking like that, sounding like that, and as long as it really was, and like the first whole like part of it was like free, right? So like Knee Deep in the Dead was free. You had to buy Shores of Hell in Inferno, right? And that's how they made their money. They hooked you with like the first act, and then the second and third act you had to pay for, which was like way better. Dude, Shores of Hell is still my favorite like span of Doom. But anyways, like the reason why Doom was so amazing was that it was the first ever multiplayer first person shooter, right? Kind of like how GoldenEye was the first multiplayer shooter on console. Doom was the first ever multiplayer shooter. Okay. And on top of that, it was all the engine was designed for the game by John Carmack, right? And everything was done in-house with like 5 people, right? So, and the two main ones was John Carmack and John Romero, right? So, but John Carmack did such a fucking good job on the fucking engine in that game, was that the game itself, like graphically speaking, right? Take like what's the most beautiful game out there right now, right? Well, just imagine this. Imagine being able to play Cyberpunk 2077 on a PS2 is basically what it was like, right? There was nothing at that time that looked and played that fucking good. And you didn't need shit to play it. The engine was so silky smooth. And like, for its time, you know what I mean? Like, it was beyond amazing. And another thing was, it was the first ever game that was first person shooter to have multiple levels up and down. Like, you could not go upstairs or downstairs in a game before that. That was a first person view game. So it was, that game broke a lot of fucking ground when it came out, and it was fucking amazing. If you didn't have a computer and playing Doom during that time, what were you doing? You know, you're probably a jock playing football, you know, getting teenage pregnancy and shit, you know, but still, fuck, that was good times, man. I miss good games. No, it's a dot map, but yeah, I've watched My House, which is based off the book, and I've read the book, and I love it. You want to know what Doom dot map I played, though? I'll give you guys guesses while I take a shit. Hold on. Be right back. Do we have any actual guesses? Or are we just going to be as vague as we can be to hopefully get something in our broad net that we're casting out? You're not net fishing. You're spear fishing, buddy. You need to step up that game. Oh, I don't know. There's a lot of maps full of demons and doom.
I didn't pick it up. It rang several more times, and finally the voicemail picked up as I was walking up the stairs to finally answer it. I would have dismissed it as a prank call if it hadn't been for the voice. It was shaky and raspy. It felt real. I was frozen in place halfway up the stairs listening to it. The voice was trying to get me to pick up the phone, saying things like I would regret it if I didn't. Finally it ended, and I prayed that it wouldn't ring again. It did. The person left several more voicemails. They started out timid and shaky, but got more aggressive. It continued with, "If you don't give me what I want, I'm going to have to hurt you. And I need to get what you owe me. I'm coming for you right now." At the end of each of them, the dial tone went off, and it went staticky as the voice broke into sobs. They kept calling and calling. This experience truly disturbed me. I mean, imagine being home alone in the middle of the night and hearing this voice coming from an upstairs phone. Nothing ever came of it though, and so I never told anyone else about it.
We knew that the shaving industry was sort of intentionally broken, it feels like. It almost...
Fucking hey, man, Big Brother. I just looked up razors and had like 3 razors advertisements there. No, it was a Doom 2 WAD. And that's what you're talking about with the maps. They're called WAD files, WADs.
I've never been much of an outdoor person, but the summer after my second year in college, one of my roommates convinced me to go tent camping with him. It was only over the weekends, and I wasn't doing anything anyway, so I said I'd go with him. For the sake of privacy, I'll call him Jake. Now, Jake would go all out. He had a 2014 Jeep Wrangler, the entire back seat filled almost completely with different camping gear. He didn't like to reserve spots at actual campsites, but instead find his own spots, which he said made it more fun. We drove up into the Rocky Mountains for a while until we found a break in the trees with enough space to fit the Jeep through. We then drove off-road between trees until I pointed out a good spot. We set up a fire pit, chairs, and the tent we'd be staying in for the night. It was already around 7 p.m. and the sun was starting to set. Jake went to the car and pulled out a bag of hot dogs for us to cook over the fire. Real original, I know, but they were an easy meal, and plus Jake wanted to give me the true camping experience seeing it was my first time. He even brought stuff for s'mores. Although, we never got that far. As we were cooking the hot dogs, this extremely loud female screaming from maybe 300 or 400 feet away echoed out throughout the trees. I looked up and saw Jake's head turn around behind him towards the direction of the screams. At first, there weren't any words we could make out, but then there was a help, a please, and a no, all of them sounding more desperate than the last. Then the loudest, most terrifying scream was abruptly cut off mid-scream. Jake looked back in my direction. The look on his face was pure horror. As far as we knew, the closest man-made structure was the road, and even that was far away. No one should have been out here. Whatever it was that we just heard didn't even matter. We knew we needed to leave as fast as possible. We started frantically throwing things in the back of the Jeep. We stuffed the still fully made tent inside as we closed the door. I tried calling 911 as we started driving back to the road. I had practically no service out there, but somehow still managed to get on the line with an operator. I did my best to explain what we heard, and they said they'd send out a trooper as soon as possible. It probably took us twice as long to get back to the road, just because this time we couldn't see anything. Finally, we saw the pavement and stopped for a second. We didn't know if we should wait for the cops or not. That's when we saw a figure walking out from the trees in front of us. He was wearing jeans with an all-black sweatshirt, the hood covering his face. He was dragging something behind him in a heavy sheet or some kind of bag.
Oh, fuck.
His head was down, laying almost limp as he walked. He looked over in our direction when blue and red police lights revealed themselves down the road. The man turned his head and started sprinting back into the forest, letting go of the bag. The police saw this and started chasing after him. The bag he was dragging turned out to contain the remains of a 34-year-old woman. We don't know if he was ever caught.
Damn.
All right, Abel, we're rolling.
Hey,
Jesus.
come on, bring that beat back.
So, this happened when I was in middle school. It was summer, and my parents had signed me up for a month-long all-boys summer camp. The campsite was exactly what you're imagining, 6 or 7 small cabins spread out in the forest. There was a small lake, a few fire pits set up, and I think there was even a sand volleyball court if I'm remembering right. It was close to 4 hours out of town. The place was old and run down, but definitely still used often for summer camps. When we got there, I unpacked all my stuff into one of the cabins and set up my bed. Some of the kids I'd be staying with wanted to check out the forest before we'd have to be back for dinner. The rules of the camp were pretty laid back. We were told we could go as far as we wanted, as long as we could still see the cabins.
That's not as far as you wanted.
Forest, one of the kids pointed something out, or rather someone. A man who had to be over 50 years old stood a few yards away looking in our direction. He looked almost homeless, really unkempt, dirty clothes, a rough gray beard. We ultimately just assumed he was one of the camp counselors. The guy gave us a weird smile, and I gave him an awkward wave back.
Hey, little boy, I want some candy.
And later that night told one of the camp counselors about it. They took it.
Do you guys give up on the .wad file I'm talking about? This is literally probably the most controversial .wad file for Doom of all times. It actually got id Software sued. Yep. That exact one. I remember Columbine. I think that was my first instance of remembering ever a school shooting, and I was still in school at the time. And, yeah, I was just all like, who the fuck and why? Like, why would you kill a bunch of kids? Like, it just never computed in my head. It still doesn't compute in my head. But, I wasn't as desensitized to it as I am now, where seems like that's all they want to fucking report. I know it's always happened and shit like that, but still, like, Jesus.
Very seriously, even going out to that part of the woods themselves. But by then the guy was gone. We started to realize that a large portion of the camp counselors were teenagers. No one was older than like 30. They didn't tell us straight to our faces, but it didn't seem like they had any idea who that man was. The next few days, we didn't do much more exploring. We were still pretty creeped out, to be honest with you. It was on the 4th night when things really hit the fan. I was sleeping and woke up to the sound of the cabin door handle rattling. Now, most nights at 11 p.m., one of the counselors would knock on all the cabins to remind the kids to lock their doors and go to sleep. Sometimes we would fall asleep before this, and it would end up waking us up. I thought this is what was happening, but I didn't have any way to tell the time, so I had no way of knowing. Being the only one awake, I felt obligated to yell out a response. I'm pretty sure I yelled out something about how we were already in bed. Right as I did this, a flashlight turned on from outside, and the light started pointing in through the windows. Someone was trying to see inside. By then, a couple of the other kids started to wake up. I remember motioning for them to get down. The person outside went around the cabin multiple times, pointing the light through every window as they did so. I don't know if they saw me, but I do know the light passed clear over me a good couple of times. After maybe 5 minutes, the light finally turned off, and everything once again returned to silence. I explained what happened to the other kids. One of them had a watch and looked at it. It was 4 a.m. That wasn't a counselor.
Absolutely
We
not.
stayed awake until morning. Finally, one of the teenage counselors came to our cabin to wake us up for breakfast. Right away, we told him what happened, and he stopped. He took us to a couple of the adult counselors where we retold the story. What we heard next was something that truly terrified us. Last night, a kid from a different cabin had gone for a walk to use the bathroom. As he was heading back, he noticed someone at our cabin door. Like us, he at first thought it was a counselor, but questioned this when he saw the person trying to pick the lock. The kid was asked to describe the man. It was dark, however, he remembered him having a beard and wearing dirty clothes. This instantly reminded me of the man we had seen in the forest on the first day.
No, Pancake.
The entire camp immediately got canceled in concern.
Thank you
of
for the
kids'
likes,
safety.
guys.
That afternoon, a bus showed up and took all of us back home. Many years have passed since this happened. I recently did my own research and was able to find a small report on it. Police were called in after we had left. They combed the area and found a small tent nearby. Inside were the essentials, along with hundreds of Polaroid pictures of the camp. The cabins, the canoes by the lake, the fire pits, everything. Among these were pictures of the kids, most of them taken from a distance, or in a place where the man taking them was clearly trying to hide. Most disturbing were the pictures taken at night through cabin windows. The police waited for someone to return to the tent, but no one ever did. The man was never found.
Fuck. Sick
You're
fucks.
sitting at home alone watching YouTube videos, wondering why you
No
can't find the
way. Why
motivation
would
to
I
do
ever
the
do
things you
that? Shut the fuck up.
It was
Let me be
approaching the end of
happy.
summer, and my wife and I wanted to go on a camping trip before it started getting cold out again. I had a ton of camping gear left over from when I used to go with college buddies and wanted to put it back to use. There was one spot we always used to go. It wasn't even technically a camping ground, just a cool spot we had found one time that I thought would be perfect to take my
Oh
wife.
shit. It like hurts.
When we got there, we noticed a makeshift fire pit
To do
and
that.
some trash left behind. So
Got that old
obviously
man
other people had found the
DLC.
spot, but we didn't really care. We set up the tent we'd be staying in and started a fire. We sat around the fire talking and drinking for hours on end. Suddenly, at around 2 a.m., we were interrupted by the sound of a chainsaw starting and revving up. Or at least that's exactly what it sounded like. Our first thought was that someone was cutting down a tree, but we didn't understand why someone would be doing that this late in the night. This theory was quickly thrown out when this maniacal laughing suddenly followed.
I mean, I maniacally laugh every time I use a chainsaw anyways.
Now we were creeped out. We put out the fire and got inside our tent. It sounded distant, so we felt somewhat safe. Plus, we had a machete if it really came to that. Over the next few minutes, it honestly sounded like the noises were getting closer.
Fuck you, Harley. Fuck you.
But thankfully, the engine, or whatever it was, abruptly cut out and a wave
Mod him.
of relief overcame us.
VIP him. Fuck you, Harley. Mod him. VIP him.
After a half hour of silence, the two of us felt comfortable enough to try and fall asleep. And surprisingly, we actually did relatively quickly, most likely in part due to the drinks we had earlier. I don't know what time it was, but at some point during the night, I remember opening my eyes, confused as to what woke me up. As my senses were coming back to me, the sound of footsteps filled my ears. I sat up to listen better and noticed my wife had already done the same. We sat there looking at each other, listening. There were multiple sets of footsteps. It sounded like no more than 20 yards away. My wife suggested we make a run for the car. I told her we should wait a few minutes. It was light out that night from the moon, and behind her I could see the silhouettes of 3 men on the tent wall. I didn't tell her this. The last thing I wanted to do was scare her. But I did get a firm grip on the machete laying next to us. Although I was horrified at the thought of actually having to use it on someone. I sat there watching the shadows. Seconds felt like hours. Finally, after what was realistically only a couple minutes, I saw them walk off. This was our chance. I told my wife it was time to go. Leaving everything behind, I opened the tent and we full-on sprinted to the car. I've never been more thankful to have a remote start key fob. I started the engine as we were running, and right as we got inside, I floored it out of there. That's when I told my wife about the shadows on the tent wall, and she laid into me for not telling her earlier. We spent the night in a hotel. The next morning, we went back to the camp. All of our stuff was gone. Not a single thing was left behind. I still don't know what really went down that night. A part of me thinks we were just unknowingly on someone else's private property, and that was
Harley's dick be like, fuck you, Harley.
was their sick way of getting us off of it.
Piece
But
of
it's possible those
big
people
beefy
meant no harm
man
to us. Either way, they now have all of our camping gear. However, I don't see us going camping again anytime soon.
Dude, I bet not. I bet not. Let's give that guy a like. Just laughing away. There. So there's another website I completely forgot about for a while that, you know, this fucking dumbass Harley over here, he recommended me. I seen a couple of videos. I don't remember what they were. I actually went to go search for it because the one I did see was actually really good. But this is a channel called Alter, and they just do like horror stuff. Yeah, they're like little mini films or whatever, right? So we're just gonna watch one.
FanDuel is giving $200 in bonus bets when you bet $5.
The fuck is FanDuel? No one gives a shit about FanDuel. Shut the fuck up. Fuck you, FanDuel. Oh, horse. This is for entertainment purposes. I dig it. These are weird, by the way. Like, the ones I saw were just like fucking crazy weird.
So I'm supposed to lay low out here for a few weeks, and then what? When do I get my fucking life back?
This one's called While Mortals Sleep.
I already have an idea for my next book. I'm ready. You think it's my fault, don't you? You know what? Don't bother. Don't bother. We're done. I have to go.
Do I need to turn this up, guys? Also, please subscribe and like the videos from like everybody that we watch if you like what they're doing. Like, you know, show them some respect and love, you know.
Hey, just wanted to let you know I made it to the house in one piece. Noticed your window's broken. If there's anything I can do about that, let me know. Otherwise, yeah, thanks again for letting me stay here. You guys saved my life. Truly. I really wish you were here right now. Just call me back when you can.
So give him a fucking thumbs up, dumbass. You heard me. Fuck. God damn it, Harley. You're out of your element. Sorry, I feel like picking on you a little bit today. Oh, what the fuck is that? God damn. Oh, they got money. That oil. Well, we got money. We as in Uncle Sam.
Don't you just love that smell? I swear.
Hi.
How are you?
Who are you?
I should ask you. You're a stranger here, not me.
I'm a friend of the family.
It's just common courtesy.
Something like that. They pay me to take care of the house when
It
nobody's
is.
home. I'm Eddie.
Yeah, nah.
Sorry if I scared you.
You didn't scare me.
Well, who's this?
She did.
She's a friend of the people who live here.
Does she have a name?
I don't know. Do you?
Susan.
Abby, this is Susan.
You know, I'm going to start replying with like something weird when everyone asks if I have a name. I'll be like, yeah, they call me P596. And just be dead ass about it and just see what happens.
Susan, this is the most wonderful woman I've ever met.
My mother's name was Susan.
Right, yeah, like, nah, I'm good.
About how we take care of people's houses.
Well, I am exhausted.
Why don't I fix us some tea? An afternoon snack.
I'm fine, really.
You might as well let her. I'm gonna be out there fixing that burst pipe all day.
All day?
Where do you think all this shit came from?
Eddie can fix the pipe and I'll fix us some tea. It's an easy enough job. Pays well and gives us our solitude.
Are you looking for something?
Some mugs for the tea. Eddie must have stuck them in the wrong cabinet. But
Or you
honestly,
just
what I
don't know
love
the
most about
house.
Watching people's homes is the feeling of stepping into someone else's life, getting a taste of their world. So what do you do?
I'm a
So sorry about this, guys, but Cappy, right? He brought something to my attention that he never has to guess where I keep stuff in my kitchen because he's just like, and he just knows where it's at. In all the houses I've ever lived in, he was just like, doot, 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 doot. And then it dawns on him afterwards and he's like, holy shit, I didn't ask for any of this. It was just exactly where I thought it would fucking be. It like freaked him out after a while. And he was like, you know, get this, man.
writer.
Oh, interesting. What do you write about?
Cold cases.
Ooh, cold cases.
Now don't tell me you're here in our little town trying to solve some silly old murder.
I'm actually taking a little bit of a break right now.
I see.
I don't want to talk about it.
I heard you yelling on the phone earlier. Someone must have really screwed you over.
All I want to
Well, surprise, surprise, surprise. You open a bag of chips and here comes a Loki. Who would have thunk? Y'all want to see Loki? I'm trying to. You gonna come up and say hi? Come get it. Up. Come on. Good boy. He's so gentle. Same with Seth. Here she comes. Up. Nah, I didn't think you would. Seth's not much one for chips.
to do was make two very sad people a little bit happier. Does that make me a monster?
Not at all. If anything, that makes you a hero.
These poor parents in the middle of nowhere, Wyoming, had their baby boy go missing.
I'm gonna run off and grab some water.
He simply vanished without a trace. Right away, I knew there wasn't much I could do. But I felt their pain. I thought, if I can give these people some honest relief and happen to get a good story out of it, what's the harm? Everyone wins.
Susan, I think it's so incredible that you took the initiative to change lives for the better by any means necessary. Eddie and I have wanted to change the world since we met each other. But change doesn't happen without someone getting their hands dirty. Isn't that what you're saying?
Yes. Thank you.
So what'd you do?
Is that your baby?
You couldn't keep him quiet for 5 minutes, could you?
Do you know who lives here?
Eddie and I are going to change the world by any means necessary, and we want you to be a part of it. Will you?
Yes.
Come see.
Big guy, hey, my God, hey, big guy. You're
Hey, 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 my guy. Come on, big guy. You won't stop crying.
What's wrong with him?
Nothing's wrong with him.
Eddie, enough. He's hungry.
He's sick from that shit you've been feeding him.
He's not sick.
He's perfect. Your baby needs professional medical attention.
All he needs is some tender love and care.
Who are you to tell us how to raise our child?
It's okay, Eddie. She needs to see. See how happy and healthy he is.
What is this?
This is God. He spoke to us in our dreams, and we combed the coast until we found what he spoke of, an ooze blacker than the darkest depths of the ocean. We consumed the divine substance and made love for 3 days straight, as the visions instructed us to.
Best 3 days of my life.
When I gave birth to him, I felt reality tear itself apart.
Oh, I don't.
Okay.
I know what it feels like, Susan. To have the world eat you up and spit you out. When I look at him, all I feel is his love.
What in the Bloodborne is going on here?
I think he wants to say hi. You want to hold him? Hold him? Hold him? Hold him? Hold him? Hold him? Hold him?
Susan, calm down.
No, there's just people in your house. I don't know. That's really weird.
It's okay.
No, it's not okay. They feel totally crazy. But you know them. Do you know who those people are?
Okay.
They're doing something in your backyard. Did you tell them that they could do that? There's this black stuff and it's really...
Just take a breath.
There we go.
There.
It's all right. Calm down.
You're okay.
It's okay now. Oh.
Take a breath.
He likes you.
The fuck did I click on?
Eddie. Let's go.
All right. Yeah, welcome to Alter, guys. That's par for the course. Let's see here. I think we got time for one more. How about that? Let's see here. I think this is the one I watched.
After all your hard work, you can't let anything stand in your way. That's why you have...
This one's fucked up. This one's really fucked up. Yeah, this is it.
You out today? If you want to get your rocks off, I'm talking the good stuff. Go to G's Tavern. It's the best I've ever had.
Dude can't even reach around his belly to grab his dick. Jesus. Yeah, it was right, William. I mean, there's some titties. There's some titties, guys. Hey, Jiggly. Jesus, you can smell that from here. Shit.
What the fuck?
What the fuck? He starts running.
This is what you wanted.
What the fuck? Oh my god. Oh shit. Oh, he's got the hand on the head. My sentiments exactly so.
You can forget your sins, but you can never forget your aquarium. Yeah.
Damn. Yeah. You got a little something, bro. Yeah. Yeah. Wash the sorrow away. I don't think I ever will. He's all fetal position in the fucking bed. Oh, shit.
You can never forget your aquarium.
Yeah. Welcome to Alter. Oh, fuck. No. You call that number. Fuck, I didn't like the video. I laughed way too hard about that. I don't give a shit. There we go. It's got 1,000 likes. 28,000 views, and only 1,000 of them were like, I guess. You said absolutely not. What if you called it? It was all like, it's William. Oh my fucking God. Blah. Ooh. I think we're going to end it on that. We can't do better. So, like, thank y'all for coming, but like, bye.